Who's the big winner? They just passed a new tax law. Who's the big winner in the tax law? Is it you and me? It must be somebody else then.
Yep.
It's the wealthy. But at the same time that they gave these huge, massive tax cuts to the wealthy, they also gave tax cuts to the middle class and to the lower class people. So, whereas the tax cuts mean billions of dollars for the very, very wealthy, it means, I don't know, $200 or $300 for you and me. Bush did the same thing. I don't know if you remember when he refunded some of the tax money because we had a surplus at that point. And now, of course, we're trillions of dollars in debt. It's not that funny, I guess. They sent us a check, they sent me a check for $200, and then they sent me a check for $300. And I was thinking, that's not very much money. Am I supposed to be happy about this? I mean, I just gave you, I don't know, $11,000, and you gave me $200 back, and I'm supposed to be happy about that? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the whole point was, and the whole point with this tax break that the administration is touting, is the fact that they gave you something. It may have been a pittance, but it was still something. And because they gave you something, are you going to remember the fact that the billionaires are getting tax breaks worth billions of dollars, or the fact that you got $200? The answer is, for a lot of people, they're just going to remember the money that they got, not the money that somebody else got. And this has to do with rewards. Those who reward us, the President of the United States, those who reward us or those we associate with awards we like. So we're more likely to like our president because he has given us $200. I know, I'm as excited as you are that I got a tax break on this new tax plan. Of course, he got a tax break of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars. But we have been rewarded by him, or at least that's what we're supposed to think. So if we don't think very deeply, then we appreciate the $200 that we got. So we like the people that reward us. And we assume they like us. That's the whole point. So the more things he gives people, even though it's nickels and dimes, the more things he gives people, the more that he thinks that they like them. Or they think that he likes them. That actually is the way it works. If a relationship gives us more rewards than costs, we like it and wish to continue. And of course, this is a relationship between the President of the United States and the people of the United States. So what are the costs for you liking Donald Trump? Well, there are no costs, because he's an iconic figure someplace that you'll never have any contact with. If an individual is trying to punish their parents for one reason or the other, a relationship with an individual that the parents dislike is very rewarding for the individual, and of course that's one of the reasons why girls will date guys that their father doesn't like, or that their mother doesn't like, or the family doesn't like, because that's very rewarding for them. So actually you're driving them into somebody else's arms by disliking somebody. So if you didn't dislike them, they probably wouldn't like them, as odd as that sounds, because you are rewarding them. They're mad at you, and therefore you are rewarding them by dating somebody that they don't like, as odd as that sounds. Okay. People who tend to like people that they associate with good feelings. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump speaks in hyperbole like he does. He's trying to communicate with his base. and his base wants this, that, and the other, and as long as he gives them what they want, then they will associate him with good feelings. Researchers created, and that's one of the reasons why he just says whatever in the world he wants to say. It's really kind of interesting that he will defend himself and lie at the same time. It doesn't really matter whether it's a lie or whether it's truth or whether it's a lie, because as long as he's making people feel good, it really doesn't make any difference. As long as he's defending himself, it really doesn't make any difference whether it's true or whether it's untrue. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, look who's here. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Have you been sick?
Kind of.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I mean, I was wondering. I missed you while you were gone.
Was it too quiet?
It was so quiet in here. I didn't have you speaking like she ever thought.
That's true.
We had a beauty contest, and you weren't even here to participate.
Oh no.
Okay, but I'm going to show you the results of the beauty contest in just a second. What are we doing? Okay, I'll stop picking on our president. Researchers created a situation where subjects interacted with an experimenter in either a positive manner or a negative manner. This is really kind of interesting. I've had enemies in my day. If somebody looks like one of my enemies, I don't like them. I know, it's bizarre. If somebody looks like one of my friends, I like them, despite the fact whether they're nice or whether they're not nice. This is just the way the world works. When the subjects were confronted with a choice of interacting with a person that looked like the initial experimenter or not, the people who had had negative experience with the experimenter avoided the individual who looked similar to her. So just because you look like somebody, they tried to stay away from them, especially if it was a negative situation. Okay, so let's pretend that I have a negative experience with African Americans. I had a negative experience with this guy. He came up to me and started yelling at me and punched me in the face. And I got out of there really quick. Okay, so what happens with the next African American gentleman that I meet?
Are you going to feel the same way?
Well, I'm going to stay away from the guy because I'm afraid of him. Well, the other guy hit me, so I don't know what this guy's going to do. This could be the nicest person in the whole wide world. It doesn't really make any difference. So what happens if the first Native Americans that I meet are over at Bosch's and this guy's trying to catch me for a pocket full of quarters or something? What happens next? All of a sudden, I don't like American Indians. Right? Isn't that the way it works? So what if the first white guy that you guys ever met was some guy that was trying to, I don't know, rip off the reservation or something? Or some priest that told you you're going to hell? Would you like white people after that? No, of course not. Of course you wouldn't. Thank you, Steve. So I got somebody to talk to there. Okay. No, that's just the way the world works. So it may be that we have people that we don't like, or there is a group of individuals that we have had trouble with in the past, and now we can't accept them, anybody from that group as positive, because we've had trouble with this group in the past. And maybe it wasn't very serious trouble. Maybe not, but we don't like them. So we will continue not liking them for an extended length of time. Proximity in itself is rewarding. It costs less in time and effort to receive friendship from someone close by. So we like people that we're near, and it's not that we don't like people that we're not near. It's just that we're not near enough to interact with them on a regular basis. Attractive people are rewarding because people benefit from associating with them. So if you're around other, you know what happened? You were telling me about if your shoe's untied, then it means you're singing, my God, I couldn't keep my shoe tied. I don't know what the hell's going on. And I blame you.
Oh, yeah, they're cheating.
I know.
That's what she told me, and here my shoe was untied right then. So, oh man, now I'm a mess. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm double tying my shoes now.
That's good.
Yeah, that ought to take care of things. Okay, so attracted people are more rewarding than unattracted people. We want to hang around them because they're more rewarding for us. If we are around attracted people, other attracted people will come up to them, and they will want to be around us as well. People with similar views are rewarding because it validates our own ideas, and we assume that they like us in return because they have the same ideas that we do. People have a need to be liked and loved, so there is a strong pull for it to happen. We need to like each other. This has always confused me. Not that people need to like each other, but there's so much dislike. How do we feel about people from Mexico? A lot of people in the United States don't like Mexicans. They consider them immigrants. They consider them, what did that guy say? Oh, it was the president. They're all rapists. Remember he said that during the election, and now he's talking about this caravan. He said that the women on the caravan have been sexually molested so much that you can't even imagine it. I'm thinking, really? Wait a minute, this is interesting. This is something he must know that the rest of us don't know. I know. So, how do we feel about Mexicans? Well, if we've never met any, then potentially, if we're listening to the president, then they scare us, people from Central America. Those immigrants coming, trying to cross the border. We don't like them. What else has he done lately? Oh, he's sending the National Guard to the border to guard the border. Which is kind of interesting because they can't carry weapons. Yeah, they can't carry weapons.
I just think that we're on the brink of war somewhere.
With
like, especially Syria, what they did to their own people, you know?
Sure.
And now we're butting in. Why do we have to butt in, you know? I mean, why is it our business?
Good question. Does anybody want to answer the question? Why are we butting in Syria? What the hell's going on in Syria? The Russians are there.
But I thought Trump liked the Russians.
He does like the Russians, but nobody else does.
Oh, so the Russians are against Syria, and that's why Trump wants to butt into.
The Russians are backing the current leader in Syria, Bashar al-Assad. Okay, so a number of years ago, what happened was in the Arab world that we had all these really strong leaders, and they were really messing over their people. So all of a sudden we had what they referred to as the Arab Spring. They had peaceful overthrows of all these tyrants all over the Arab community. This happened in Tunisia, it happened in Egypt, it happened in Morocco. It started to happen in Syria. The Syrians were peacefully demonstrating, and Assad, instead of allowing them to, the process to take place, cracked down on them, and that started the Syrian civil war. So all of a sudden we've got civil war taking place in Syria, with the government fighting on one side and with the rebels fighting on the other side. So the question came up, do we back Assad or do we back the rebels? Well, we decided that we were going to back the rebels because the Arab Spring had been taking place in all these other places around the Middle East. So we started backing the rebels, but then ISIS came in. ISIS was one of the rebel groups, and the question was, will we arm ISIS or not? We knew ISIS was not a good group of people. There were like 3 different groups, and one of them was ISIS, and then there were 2 other rebel groups. So we tried to arm the 2 rebel groups and not arm ISIS, and as it turned out, of course, you can't tell the difference. All Syrians look alike. As it turns out, all Syrians look alike. So ISIS started doing horrible things around the world, beheading people. Their big thing was beheading people and televising it. Anyway, the Russians decided that, this was during the Obama administration, the Russians decided that they were going to back Assad because as far as they were concerned, a stable government was better than no government at all. That's what they said. And they also said that if we overthrow Assad, then ISIS is going to take over in Syria, and that's unacceptable. So they started backing Assad. And now that's where we are. So we're there. We are making bombing runs in Syria, and the Russians are there. They have like 2,000 troops. We have 2,000 troops in Syria. They have whatever they have in Syria, but they're making bombing runs as well. So over the weekend, somebody gassed somebody. But a town that was held by the rebels was gassed. And so all these families died in their homes, strangled to death. Anyway, that's what's going on. So now we have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to punish Assad for attacking his people, for gassing his people? We already said that we wouldn't allow that to happen again. Remember, Obama said that was the line that you couldn't cross. And so Assad said that he was going to get rid of all of his chemical weapons. And the Russians said that they were going to monitor him getting rid of all of his chemical weapons. So that's where we are right now. Isn't this fun? World War III could break out. If we attack Assad, then potentially the Russians will come to his aid and we will suddenly be fighting the Russians. Okay, that's what's going on. Yeah. So this could all blow up in the next 2 days. Because Trump said he was going to decide what he was going to do. So I guess
I think we should just drop a bomb on them.
Well, we've tried to do that before. It doesn't work. It worked with the Japanese because we had already defeated them, but it's not going to work anyplace else. It's just you can't destroy enough, unfortunately, or fortunately. Anyway, okay. So what's going on? So we're attracted to people that we're close to. Okay, attracted people are rewarding. We already talked about that. People with similar views are rewarding. People have a need to be liked and loved, so there's a strong pull for all this to take place. Love has been described in many ways by philosophers, scientists, and romance novelists, whoever you're talking to. Psychologists Lee, Hendrick, and Hendrick, a husband and wife team, identify 3 primary love styles. The first one is Eros. Eros is self-disclosing passion. I love you. Self-disclosing passion. The second is ludus, uncommitted game playing, where you're just messing around back and forth. And the third is storge, and that just means friendship, storge. I know, it's a weird word. Combining these 3 styles in different combinations creates a compendium of love styles that we see around the world and in our homes, hopefully. Elements that are common in all loving relationships, mutual understanding between the 2 individuals or whatever we're talking about, giving and receiving support, enjoying the loved one's company, you want to be with them. Thus, relationships with high levels of eros and storge tend to have a higher relationship satisfaction because we have the passion and we also have the desire, the friendship. And this is what people say: the marriages, the relationships that stay together the longest are the ones that started out as friendships, and then moved into passion. What if it happened the other way around? Well, that would work as well. Passionate love fits this criteria: a state of intense longing for a union with another, and that's passionate love. While eras in history where differing cultures articulate it differently, most have supported an ideal of romantic love in connection with family units and procreation. Doesn't have to happen. as we well know. Most marriages in the world are not love marriages. They are arranged marriages. So this is what we see all over Asia. This is what we see in Africa. Not so much in Central and South America or North America. But of course, if you talk to your parents and grandparents, potentially they were in an arranged marriage. Research shows that while women are more likely to articulate the state of being in love, men react in a similar manner, though their recovery seems to be slower and they are less likely to want to break off a premarital romance. In other words, who gets over a relationship faster? The answer is women do. Women get over a relationship faster. Because they want to be in love, and if the other person doesn't love them, then they move on to whatever's next. The male is more likely to try to hold on to the female than the female is to try to hold on to the male. But we talked about that when we were talking about who do you shoot if you find somebody in bed with your significant other. If you're a female, you shoot your husband, and if you're a male, you shoot the guy. You don't shoot your wife. As funny as that is, or not funny at all. That's not even a little bit funny. Women tend to focus on intimacy while men focus on the playful, physical aspect of the relationship. So women are looking for intimacy, and if they're not getting it from that select individual, they move on to something else. They did a study where they were looking at how long it took men and women to get over relationships. It took women about 2 years to get over a relationship. It took men 2.5 years to get over a relationship. So if you've ever broken up with somebody, and if you're a female, then probably the guy was begging you to come back over and over and over and over and over again.
Well, how could a man, like, say he's been in a relationship with a woman for about 15 years, how could he just all of a sudden one day say, I don't like you, and he's telling the wife, and he's telling the kid, I don't like you, and
Telling his own children he doesn't like his own children.
and then he moves out and he gets with another woman like that same week. And him and that woman been together for like 2 years now.
Yeah, they've been separating. I mean, people separate even though they stay together. They still have been separating from one another over an extended period of time. When was the last time you loved this person? Well, about 2 years ago. Well, why didn't you leave? Well, because of the kids, that kind of thing. So these relationships, just because they're still together, doesn't mean that they are actually romantically still together.
Well, how about my dad and my mom? They've been like separated for 20-some years, but my dad always talks about my mom, like, oh, I wish I would have stayed with her.
So what does your mom say?
My mom's like,
That son of a bitch, exactly. See, that proves my point. He still wants to be in the relationship.
oh yeah.
Yeah, because what does he remember? He remembers the fun stuff. He remembers the playful, physical aspect of the relationship. What does she remember? Well, what she wants to remember is the intimacy that she had. But the intimacy, of course, dissipated a number of years ago, and now he's just a son of a bitch. Isn't that the way it works? So it takes men a little bit longer, not that much longer, about 6 months longer, to get over a relationship than it does a woman. Companionate love is the feeling of affection we feel for a romantic partner that we have intertwined our lives with over time. Been married to my wife for 39 years. That's a long intertwining. While passionate love is characterized by wild emotions, companionate love is lower key, deeper, and more affectionate. Now remember, the men are looking, they're remembering the playful, they're remembering the physical aspect of the relationship. And the woman is looking for intimacy. So he's looking for a hot time and she's looking for a hug. Okay. If you put the hot time in with the hug, then maybe your relationship will last for 39 years, I don't know. People addicted to the feeling of passion may seek short-term relationships that feed the need for the passion fix. And so this is just something that you need to think about when you decide to get married or how long your relationship is going to last. Remember that the guy he's just there for a good time. He's just there for the physical. He's there for the playful. He wants to joke back and forth, and you know that's part of who he is. And of course, once the intimacy is gone, then the lady checks out of the relationship once the intimacy is gone. So it's just something to think about. Knowing these things, it's a little bit easier for me to maintain my relationship. I will always give my wife a hug whenever she wants one. To maintain the intimacy. Bonding. In our anthropologic past, loners were less likely to survive than people that connected themselves to other people. So we need to bond. This is the only way we can survive. Thus humans evolved seeking to bond themselves to other humans. And of course, as gregarious people, that's the only way we can get from one place to the other. That's the only way we can survive. This bonding is tied to our DNA and begins as soon as the baby is born. 70% of all babies display secure attachment when they are born. These babies trust their mothers to be there when they are needed. Adults who were secure as babies tend to have secure, loving relationships. They find it easy to get close to others, and they don't fret about getting too dependent on being abandoned or being abandoned. They tend to enjoy sexuality within the context of a continuing relationship. They trust their significant other. That's why my shoe being untied didn't bother me that much. Okay. Though I thought about it every time my shoe became untied. Oh. Geez, you created something in my brain. Anyway, so I have secure attachment. Now you would think with my history of losing wives to best friends that I would be a little bit more sensitive about these things, but I'm not. I don't know why. I guess I don't care.
Get some boots.
I get boots, good idea. Velcro so they don't come untied. Like my grandson, he has Velcro shoes. About 20% of infants exhibit avoidant attachment. These infants tend to ignore their caregiver and avoid closeness with them. As adults, these individuals tend to invest less in relationships. They bounce from one relationship to the other. Sex without love is acceptable, and one-night stands are common with these individuals. They find relationships either scary or unnecessary, completely unnecessary. And these are the people with avoidant attachment as children. Okay, so the way that you're treated as a baby, or the way that you treat your parents as a baby, is going to predict how you treat your significant other in the future, as odd as that seems. Now, the vast majority of people are securely attached. 70% of all babies are securely attached. So they don't really have to worry about their relationships. It's just a natural thing for them. These are the people that have a hard time with their relationships. These are the people that develop borderline personality. Well, actually, it's the next group that develop borderline personality disorder. These guys become sex addicts. And these guys become borderline. 10% of infants are insecurely attached. These infants are clingy with their parents most of the time, but seem to punish their mother for being gone when their mother returns. As adults, they become anxious, ambivalent, fluctuating between hostility and indifference in a relationship. Sounds borderline, doesn't it? They tend to treat their significant others as they did their mothers, possessive and jealous, but also rejecting. Remember, when the mother comes back, they reject them. They tend to be overly emotional and may break up repeatedly with the same individual because they don't know what they want. Okay, so this may answer your question as to these, and both of these individuals are relatively attractive, and that's one of the reasons why this person is very passionate. But once they get somebody, then they start rejecting them. They don't trust their own feelings. As odd as that may seem. Most relationships cannot survive unless there is there is as much give as there is take. This is known as equity principle of attraction. Everyone should be getting out of a relationship what they are putting into it. When there is inequity in a relationship, or at least feelings of such, the loser will keep adding to the debt of the other until the relationship ends. And that's usually after the straw has broken the camel's back. And that's just the way it works. If you've ever been in a relationship where the person kept telling you all the bad things that you did, 5 years ago, yeah, okay, that's because there was inequity in the relationship. Okay, that's how love works. Sorry, I didn't make it up. I don't think I did. I tried not to. Wait a second. What else? Okay, here's the beauty contest. The results for the beauty contest. Of course, Kiana didn't get to participate. There was a winner in the beauty contest, as exciting as that may be, and the winner was. Wait a minute. And the winner was Shirley's Theron. 2 people voted for Shirley's. Yeah, there you go. The most beautiful person in the world, Shirley's Theron.
Wow.
I know. Well, at least in this classroom. Of course, I didn't get the vote. Taylor Lautner was also, well, he got a vote. He was one of the individuals that got a vote. Jessica Biel received a vote. Brad Pitt received a vote. He's an old man, isn't he? He's like 50. Oh my God. Beyonce got a vote. I apologize if these pictures aren't representative of the individuals.
I know, they look all tired or something.
It's because they're actors. Keanu Reeves got a vote. That's when he was younger. I don't know I think his beard has turned white. He has Japanese ancestry.
I thought he was Indian.
English? Indian? No. He's Japanese. He's from Canada. He's Canadian.
Oh.
Megan Fox got a vote. Megan Fox, who looks better when she doesn't smile. For some reason, I don't know. I looked at all these pictures and somebody else who looks good when they don't smile is Leonardo DiCaprio. When he smiles, he looks like he's trying to steal your lunch money or something. I don't know. Or trying to sell you a car that doesn't run. Okay. Leonardo DiCaprio. Adriana Lima, somebody I had never heard of before. She's
Victoria's Secret model.
What do I know? Jason Momoa. Looks kind of scary. I'm guessing he's on that Throne movie. What is that television show?
He said Aquaman.
He's Aquaman?
Yeah, is he?
With all that hair, he's Aquaman?
Aquanet.
Aquanet. That's a hairspray, isn't it? Aquanet.
I was just kidding.
Gal Gadot, of course, is Wonder Woman. See, I know all this. Henry Cavill is Superman. Isn't he? I guess. I don't know. Kate Winslet, she's the last one. This is her when she was younger. She doesn't look, she's filled out since, she's not as quite as attractive as this. Anyway, that's our beauty contest winners. And if you were going to add the prettiest woman and the prettiest man in the world?
Mila Kunis and
Really? Ashton Kutcher's significant other.
yeah.
Are they married?
I think they're married now.
Okay, at least they got a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least one. Okay.
And I don't know about the man.
Come on, you don't know about the guy?
Have you seen do you know who G-Eazy is?
No.
No.
Of course I know. Okay. So that's your pick for the guy. Okay. But I could look him up.
Do you know what he looks like?
I don't know. I don't have any idea who he is. Okay. Okay, let's look at altruism. I think there's only 14 chapters in the textbook, or maybe 13.
I think it's 13.
13, yeah, 13. Okay, so we're not that far behind, if we're behind at all. Altruism, helping others. Really weird stuff. So how much do you help other people? That's the question. How altruistic are we supposed to be? Do we get rewarded? Well, if we get rewarded, then it's not altruism. Really interesting. 1977, Everett Sanderson jumped down on the subway tracks to save the life of Michelle de Jesus, only seconds before the onrushing train would have struck her. After failing to jump back onto the platform, he saved her life, but he was about to be hit by the train. Sanderson was pulled to safety at the last instant by onlookers. Happy story. Doesn't always happen that way. A lot of people just sit and watch and don't react. But he did. He jumped down and saved her life. African-American Otis Gaither smashed through the door of a burning mobile home one night and pulled white Larry Whitten to safety. When Whitten failed to respond, Gaither applied CPR. He sucked his face, despite the racist symbol that fluttered over the burning structure. Of course, this has become more and more of a racist symbol. They're taking it down all over the South. But there, you can still see the flag flying from time to time. You can still see it on the back of pickup trucks.
You know, after that shooting that happened in Vegas, I took all the RAs to Vegas, and that it was just like right after that, you know, and we stayed at Circus, and we were walking down the street and nothing but those Black American flags, and you can tell there was one of these ones too, and you know there was just people going down the strip non-stop. Did you see that, Kiana?
To see, the motorcycles?
There was trucks, there was motorcycles and
Yeah.
everything, but that's what they were flying. They were flying the
Black
flags.
American flags?
Yeah, those
Black and white American flags.
black. They're like a black and bluish. I don't know what that symbol means.
On the way to Gallup, there's a guy flying a blue and white American flag.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. I'm guessing it's some form of rebellion.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm not exactly sure.
But I mean, there must have been about an hour of people just going through doing that.
Don't know what that means. Of course, this is a racist symbol. The guy was black. The person in the trailer was white. He did save his life. He saved his life despite the fact that the man was displaying his racism. The Avenue of the Righteous Among the Nations is a line of trees planted commemorating the hundreds of Europeans who saved Jews during Hitler's Holocaust. A lot of people don't know these stories, but not just Anne Frank, of course, but there were a number of other individuals that saved Jewish lives. Of course, it was at great peril to themselves. They provided haven and food for members of the hunted religion. The Jews were being hunted all over Europe. The Nazis controlled practically the entire continent of Europe, but there were some places where they wouldn't allow them to take their Jewish populations away. Where specifically the Free French in southern France wouldn't allow them to come in. The Hungarians in select cities would not allow them to take their Jewish population away. Okay, so we're talking about altruism here. So what is altruism? If you've ever heard the story of the Good Samaritan, can anybody explain to me what a Samaritan is and why he is good? Or why being a good Samaritan is different from being a bad Samaritan? Who were the Samaritans, and why is that story significant? The story of the Good Samaritan. I've been hearing this story all my life.
Samaritans are the ones that do good deeds, or like
So they're naturally good people.
Yeah, like if somebody fell and people just walk by, then you have your Good Samaritan. That would help that person out.
Well, Jesus told this story.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, okay, so, and there was a point to this story. But most people miss the point because you have to understand who the Samaritans were before you understand the point of the story.
Mm.
So who were the Samaritans? Does anybody know? See, they tell you the story and then they don't explain it. Well, if they don't explain it, then you don't get the right impact from the story. The Samaritans were not Jews, okay? They were Samaritans, and the Samaritans were a mixture of Assyrian and Israelis. Some of them were intermarried with Israelis. They practiced a religion that was similar to Judaism, but it wasn't the same as Judaism. And for that reason, the Jewish people hated them. Just like Catholics and Protestants, they're both Christian religions, yet look at all the wars that have been created because of Catholicism and Protestantism, right? Similar situation in Israel. So we've got the Samaritans, and the Samaritans are people that they interact, but they're despised people by the Jewish people. So one day, a merchant, a Jewish merchant, is set upon by bandits, and they not only steal all of his money, but they strip him naked, and so he's laying on the side of the road, beaten and injured, with no clothes on. Because he has no clothes on, a Levite, who is a holy man, a Jewish holy man, passes him, and because he doesn't have any clothes on, he won't touch him because he doesn't want to soil himself. Another holy man, a priest, comes by, a Jewish priest comes by, and he sees him, and he won't touch him either because he doesn't want to soil himself. Because there are Jewish taboos about nudity, there are Jewish taboos about being unclean and being injured. So they just pass him by. And then a Samaritan comes by, sees the man injured, and he goes over, and he not only wraps his wounds, but he also clothes him and takes him to a local inn and gives the innkeeper money and tells him that if he doesn't, if it costs more money than he has given him, that he will reimburse him for whatever cost there is. And that's the story of the Good Samaritan. These holy Jewish individuals pass this man by because of the taboo, because they don't want to soil themselves. They don't want to be soiled. But the Samaritan not only gives of himself, but he also gives of his wealth in order to take care of this person. And that's altruism. That was the whole point of the story. That was theoretically the whole point of the story anyway. I got you guys logged in. There we go. Okay, we're all done. That's the story of the Samaritan, and that's why the Samaritan is important. You have to remember that the Samaritan is the rejected person. The Samaritans were hated by the Jewish people, and that's so. So if you're thinking that because you are like me that you're good, and because you're not like me you're bad, Jesus was telling people, no, that's not true. That isn't always true, because sometimes good people can not do what is right, and bad people can do, or people that are perceived as bad can do the right thing. That was the point of the story. Okay? And that has to do with altruism. Oh, I got a picture. There you go. The Good Samaritan. And here's the Levite and the priest. Here's the Levite and there's the priest. Just passing the guy by. The other deal was that he put the man on his donkey and he walked. Of course, wealthy people will not walk. You know, that was the whole point. If you're wealthy, you don't walk. But he put him on his donkey and took him to an inn. That was part of the story as well. Altruism, and so nobody gets it because nobody understands, because they don't explain who Samaritans were. Altruism is the act of concern in helping of someone else with no expectation of gaining anything in return. Now this gets really kind of tricky, because without expectation of gaining anything in return, that's the kicker. So if I do something for Edison, and I'm thinking, because I'm doing something for Edison, Francis is going to really like me because he knows I did something nice for Edison. If I'm doing it for that reason, then it's not altruistic, because I'm thinking I'm going to get something from it. But true altruism is where you don't expect anything in return. Why people help has been the subject of much research. The social exchange theory purports that people weigh the costs of such interactions and seek to maximize their rewards and minimize their costs. So the idea, these are social exchange theory is actually an economic theory. This is really kind of interesting. So here we have all these business people trying to tell us, how people interact. Well, nobody does anything for nothing. That was the idea. So you're trying to maximize your rewards and minimize your costs. Rewards provided from helping may be external or internal. External rewards may be in the form of appreciation or friendship. Therefore, we are more likely to help someone whose approval we desire, someone attractive to us. So if I find Francis attractive, I may do something for him. But that's not really me being altruistic because of his attractiveness. I'm trying to gain his friendship. I'm trying to ingratiate myself to him. And that's why I do nice things for him. Does that make sense? You're welcome. Internal rewards include increased feelings of self-worth, but it also includes reducing the feelings of distress that one might feel caused by the empathy for someone else's pain. So the internal rewards may have to do with the fact that it's going to bother me if I don't stop and help that injured dog. I'm going to feel bad if I don't do that. So that is part of the internal reward. And of course, that's me trying to tell myself that I have self-worth. So that's why I'm helping. Let's talk about dogs for a second. Margaret shamed me into taking a dog.
Again?
Well, no. The 3 is all I have. I just have 3 dogs. But initially it was because she shamed me into taking the damn thing. And then it turned out to be a great dog, so everything's okay. That's part of my self-worth. She didn't like the fact that one of the dogs that I have was a stray that was running around the Hogan housing, starving to death, and nobody would feed the poor thing, so I fed it. And then she stayed, and now she's my dog. She's the only one I've got now. The other 2 are back in Iowa. But yeah, I started feeding her, and now she's my dog. But Margaret didn't like that because she's got this pile of puppies back there, and she wanted me to take one of the puppies. Instead, I took this adult dog, so she got upset with me. Oh, Margaret and I.
I told you what she did with my cat, right?
Yeah. I know. Well, she's a good Samaritan. She wants to be the good Samaritan.
She kidnapped my cat, and she got her spaded, I don't know, that woman, she's kind of crazy.
She's always right. Whatever she thinks is correct. So evidently you were wrong and she was right. Clary, Amato, and Snyder researched people who volunteer to help AIDS patients. They found that there were 6 forms of motivation that these individuals had. Values, to act on humanitarian values and concern for others. These things are written down. I guess they're in the Bible. And if you do nice things for people, then evidently you're going to get rewarded in heaven. I guess that's the way it works. I don't quite understand.
No, if you do nice things for people, like out of the kindness of your heart, like truly kindness out of your heart, you're not going to go around and say, that guy was starving, and I gave him $20 and, and now he's eating, if you do something out of the kindness of your heart,
you don't talk about it.
Yeah. So the more you do it and the more you keep quiet and, just go about your own business and be a good person, then your rewards will come to you when you die or something like
Oh,
that.
jeez, I don't want to die.
Have to wait till you're
I want
dead.
rewarded right now. Give me my money now. Oh, sorry, it's not in money, I'm just kidding. And that's values, of course. Understanding to learn about people or learn skills. And of course, that's another reason why people were helping the AIDS patients. They were trying to figure out what was going on. And they were learning new skills, how to take care of individuals. Maybe then they became a nurse or something, or a doctor, who knows. Social, to be part of a group and to gain approval. And this happens a lot. You'll join a church group or you'll join a select group. And because of that, those people appreciate you. You do whatever you do. And of course, now you get rewards from the group. Career, to enhance job prospects with experience and contacts. Ego protection, to reduce guilt or escape personal problems. In other words, you're trying to forget your troubles. Esteem enhancement, to boost self-worth and confidence. You feel better about yourself. And that's what Clary, Amato, and Snyder found out. Those of us who live in rural environments, and I guess we all do, don't we? Yeah, none of us are city people, are we? Have you ever lived in the city?
No, just
Okay.
towns and
Towns, yeah, but not
small-
cities. You do things for your neighbors, don't you? City people don't. City people they don't have neighbors. They don't recognize their neighbors. There's too many of them. So they don't even know their neighbors. But country people, we know our neighbors. And we do things for our neighbors, don't we?
I think it's that way too on the res. Like on the res, you know, a lot of people up north don't do things for their neighbors. You know, like my auntie lived across the road from my uncle, and my uncle and I kept saying, she needs to hurry up and move, get that ugly trailer out of here, you know, but that was her land,
Sure.
you know, and nobody would help her. You know,
Not even the uncle who thought it was an ugly trailer?
yeah.
So that goes against what I was saying. What I was saying is we help our neighbors. And we do it for free. I was 2 years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, we had this huge snowstorm in Iowa. And here I am, I'm digging, of course I'm digging out my driveway. And my driveway's about 200 yards long. Anyway, so I'm digging along and I'm digging along, and of course I'm making it crooked because I don't know, you can't keep it straight when you're digging out snow. Anyway, my neighbor drove past with his tractor, and he was driving around cleaning people's driveways. And he just came in and cleaned I never met the guy. He just came in and cleaned my driveway. Just did it.
For money?
No, he didn't even stop so I could shake his hand. He just cleaned my driveway and then took off.
He just said move.
Okay, get out of my way.
You got a lot of driveways to clean, so yours is probably one of them.
He was cleaning people's driveways for free. It was just him being neighborly. And he did that. Of course, he was a bachelor, so he didn't have anything else to do, I guess. It was a great big John Deere. In Iowa, they don't have little small tractors. They have these huge industrial tractors. And of course, they're like wider than your driveway. And so when he cleaned off my driveway, he cleaned off the ditch as well. He cleaned everything up. It was really kind of amazing. And then he went down and cleaned the next guy's driveway, and then he went down and cleaned the next guy's driveway.
You know, in Montana this year, I seen a post on Facebook about people getting pissed off saying, those SOBs, they didn't clean my driveway. I had to pay someone to come over and clean it, and they charged me $30 just for one driveway.
You're talking about the tribe.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so, like, a lot of people back home, they won't do it for being neighborly. You know, I don't even think they know what that means, you know, but I mean, you could throw it out there, that'd be really interesting.
Maybe Indians aren't very neighborly.
Yeah.
No, they were, on Belknap, they always cleaned out the driveways
Elders.
of the elders, exactly. Of course, they're more elder aware than they are in other
And again,
places.
when you do something like that for the neighborly, next time around, some
They
people
expect it.
have that expectation.
Sure.
They'll think, well, he or she will do it again, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna worry about it. And if you don't do it for them, it automatically kind of shifts on you. 'Cause we have a tendency of doing that with our tractor during winter. Basically, we'll clean the main, dirt road, and then some driveways to people's houses and stuff like that. But the next year, if we don't do that, then we get criticized for it sometimes.
You get criticized for it. That sounds like Indians.
As the saying goes, they differently do.
That's kind of interesting, isn't it? You don't do anything for free. Well, you do things for free, and then people criticize you for not doing more for free. Then the expectations are there. So would you be better off not ever doing it at all?
Not really, we just don't worry about it, we just
Yeah.
do it, just to help people out. I mean,
There you go.
it's a neighborly thing.
I'm just trying to help people out. Exactly.
But we try not to get people too dependent upon it.
Well, this is kind of interesting, isn't it? So when do you help, I guess is the question. Whenever you feel like it? Yeah.
Like whenever there's a big storm,
Yeah.
even during the summertime, it's like that, like during the spring season, when it comes to irrigating and stuff like that, cleaning out the canals
Oh,
in
okay.
the areas. Yeah, same case scenario.
I got all this energy and I need to burn it off. Here, I'll help you. Social exchange, some might contend that altruism has so many external rewards that people do it more for their own benefit than that of others. And this is the social exchange theory. But remember, I told you, the social exchange theory wasn't purported by psychologists, it was purported by business people.
About like of community gardens, I see
Right.
some like around, people do take their time off and do community gardens.
Right. I was talking to Marius the other day, and he was saying, you know, my neighbor plants a huge garden, and he has more vegetables than he knows what to do with. So he comes over and he gives us his extras, and we really appreciate it, of course. But I mean, that's kind of the same situation.
Yeah.
He's planting a big garden, knowing that he's not going to be able to eat it all, potentially, or maybe something won't grow, and then he's got just enough. But I don't. Anyway, he plants more than he needs, and then he gives it for free. I mean, it's not like he's knocking on the door and asking you to give him $5 for a tomato or something. He's just giving it away because it's free. Yeah. Thus, they contend that altruism is a form of egoism where the real benefit is that of the giving individual. In other words, who is getting the... See, isn't this an upside down and backwards theory? But of course it's business people. Business people want to sell you stuff, right? So they don't believe in giving stuff away. I said shit. They don't believe in giving stuff away. So they try to denigrate the idea of giving things away. You're not doing it for that person, you're doing it for yourself. It makes you feel good inside. So you're getting more out of it than they are. Well, it seems kind of an odd way of looking at things. However, Daniel Batson sees altruism as working both as a self-serving and selfless act, and this is Daniel Batson. Batson referred to our focus on sufferers' distress as empathy, genuine sympathy and compassion for the other individual. Such empathy comes naturally. We are naturally empathetic. Other animals will come to another's aid. They will comfort a sufferer. Other animals do this. So this is in our DNA as mammals. This is what happens. I don't know if you've ever been around dogs, but sometimes dogs, if one of the dogs is in distress, all the other dogs will come and try to protect that dog. They will also try to comfort that dog. How do dogs cure themselves? They lick their wounds. And that's how they try to cure themselves. What they will do is they will lick the wounds of the other dog or the other creature. They will comfort the victim, and that's usually by grooming them, by licking their wounds. They will show distress at another's emotional response. Oh, jeez. One time we were in Oklahoma. We were driving across country, and we had 2 dogs with us. And one of my dogs tried to attack this other dog, and my dog that never is aggressive tried to get in and help his dog, or his buddy dog, and instead of helping, he bit the back of my leg. My dog bit my own leg, and trying to help the other dog. So the one dog was in distress, and of course they tried to help. A newborn baby, and this drives you crazy. You go into a nursery, and if one of the babies starts crying, they all start crying. And it's like stair steps. One will start crying, then the one right next to it will start crying, then the one next to that one will start crying. Sometimes it goes in 2 different directions. If it's the baby in the middle that starts crying first, it's one of those type of deals. It just drives you nuts. And of course, as a laboratory technician, one of my jobs was drawing blood from babies. So if I was drawing blood from a baby, it'd usually make the baby cry, and then the baby next door would start crying on both sides. And of course the nurses were all up in arms. They wanted to shoot me. So a lot of times I escaped from the nursery just barely with my life, because the nurses were after me for making all the babies cry. Empathy produces helping even toward members of rival groups. If you're empathetic, with their empathy aroused, people will help even when they believe no one will know about their helping. And this is known as empathy. So maybe we aren't the individuals that are looking for accolades. Maybe we're just trying to help. If somebody needs help, we try to help them. With their empathy aroused, people will violate their own standards of fairness and justice by giving the person favored treatment. And of course, this is one of the reasons why I can't referee. I believe in equity. I try. So if one team is killing the other team, I start calling the game for the team that's losing. Welcome back. What, did you just rob something and now you're hiding in the corner?
No, I just talked to my other instructor, and he told me that we're having a closed book exam.
Oh no, what's going to happen next? Maybe you won't. We'll only assume that you'll do very well. Sometimes people will help others when there is no self-interest involved, but because society prescribes the helping behavior as a norm. And of course, if you are a member of a church and your church tells you that you have to help, then sometimes you do it even though you don't want to, because it's expected of you. So my question is, if you don't really want to do it, but you do it anyway because the church told you you had to, you didn't do it voluntarily, you did it so that your church would appreciate you. Is that real empathy? Is that really empathy?
I won't think until later.
There are 2 social norms, reciprocity norms or expectations that if you help a person, they will help you and not hurt you. In other words, they'll be nice to you because you have helped them. Social responsibility norms or expectations that people will help those dependent upon them, that are dependent on you. Evolutionary psychology purports that animals are driven to maximize the survival of their own genes. Thus, an individual is more likely to put their children's welfare ahead of their own, though children are less likely to sacrifice themselves for their parents. I give my kids money all the time. They never pay it back. If I needed money, would my kids sell their cars so that they could help me? I don't know if they would or not. I wouldn't want them to.
You should test it.
I'm sorry?
You should test it. Ask your children and see if they'll consider it.
What, selling their cars so that they can help me? I don't think that's going to, I wouldn't want that to happen anyway. I wouldn't want to damage my children in any way. This kin favoritism is referred to as kin selection. This favoritism may be prevalent with people who aren't actually relatives, but who look similar to us. What is one of the things they're saying about Daniel Cohen? That he's a member of Trump's family, despite the fact he's not really a member of the family. That's the lawyer, Daniel Cohen. It was just, his office was just raided, his home. His hotel room was raided. Who cares? It's a hotel room. Okay, anyway. So sometimes we'll help people just because they are similar to us. So we're more likely to help somebody that looks like us. Evolutionary psychologists also believe that we may help others because we expect others to return the favor. And this, of course, is known as reciprocity. While reciprocity is unlikely to work in large impersonal urban areas, it does tend to work in small isolated groups or in rural areas. And that may be one of the reasons why neighbors help neighbors in rural areas. People in small groups feel closer to the others in the group and will often sacrifice for them with the understanding that when fortunes are reversed, reciprocity will happen. Large and impersonal sometimes has the opposite effect, of course. They won't help at all. And let me give you some examples. In 1964, Kitty Genovese was attacked by a knife-wielding rapist in front of her own apartment house in Queens. And this is actually where she was raped. This is a picture of her apartment building. As you can see, it's a two-story building. But there were apartments on both sides of the street. For 35 minutes, she fought off her rapist while screaming in terror in the middle of the street. She was very, very loud, trying to get people to come out. He had torn her clothes off. He had a knife, of course, and he was stabbing her. 38 of her neighbors were aroused and observed the attack from the safety of their homes. Nobody helped. Nobody came out to help. Nobody even called the police. 35 minutes, and it wasn't just the 35 minutes. He left her for dead. He raped her, left her for dead, and she crawled into a entryway, and he came back and raped her again and murdered her this time. So it happened twice, and still nobody did anything. She was raped, and of course she died of her wounds. We're going to talk about this in just a second. Andrew Mormill was attacked on a crowded subway car. He was knifed in the stomach. His attackers left the car at the next stop. 11 riders watched the man bleed to death as they rode home. And they did nothing. An 18-year-old switchboard operator was sexually assaulted while working alone. She escaped out in the street naked and bleeding with her attacker in pursuit. 40 pedestrians watched as the attacker tried to pull her back inside. Nobody helped. 2 policemen happened by and they stopped the assault. We're not done. It gets worse. Well, it's not so bad. Eleanor Bradley tripped and broke her leg in a crowded street. Dazed and in pain, she pleaded for help. For 40 minutes, shoppers merely parted and flowed around her. 40 minutes she laid there, crying and screaming, asking people to help, and nobody did. A cab driver finally stopped and helped her. Took her to a doctor. Yeah. June 2000, I remember when this happened. There was a parade that wound past Central Park. It took a turn for the macabre when groups of drunk men began tearing the clothes off of and fondling female parade watchers. Ann Payton was forced to negotiate her way home with her underwear torn away. Police ignored the problem and no calls from cell phones were received despite the thousands who watched the attacks. It was a Puerto Rican pride parade, and some of these guys were drunk, and they attacked women. And everybody watched and nobody did jack. Nobody did anything. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? The Kitty Genovese rape and murder was a wake-up call for social psychologists. We didn't believe this kind of stuff could happen. Not in the United States, by God. We're not as bad as those damn Nazis, those crazy Germans. We're not that bad. Well, maybe we are. Unwilling to accept the callousness of Kitty's neighbors, psychologists began researching to discover how and why such egregious crimes can be watched and allowed to continue with no one lifting a finger to help. Would you guys have helped? I mean, just pick up the damn telephone. This is what happened. They interviewed the neighbors, and in some cases, the husband and wife were watching, and the husband went over to the telephone and started to call the police, and the wife came over and stopped him and told him not to get involved. And it didn't happen once, it happened several times. Remember, there were 38 people that watched this lady being raped and murdered. What in the world's going on? Are we so cold that we don't care? Well, that was the question the social psychologists were trying to answer. Researchers discovered that people in groups are less observant than people in small groups. Research done with smoke pouring from an air vent demonstrated that people in large groups took 4 times as long to see the smoke. When you're in a group, you feel safe because you're in a large group. If you're in a smaller group, then you don't feel nearly as safe, so you're more observant about what's going on around you. Does all that make sense? So in large groups, you're less observant. Thus, the people in the crowd partying around Eleanor Bradley may not have even noticed Eleanor laying there until after they passed. With advance notice in a less crowded sidewalk, the individual may have been more likely to see Eleanor and evaluate her need. Maybe. Well, that's what they hope anyway. Or maybe people that live in cities are just mean sons of bitches. Every damn single one of them. Travis is back there nodding his head yes. Or maybe you're not. Have you ever lived in a city?
Just for a while, about 4 months.
Did you feel less attached to people when you were there?
I think
The people around you?
Yeah.
They were different than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different people aren't the same at all. Well, I guess if they're different, they aren't the same, are they? The larger the group of people, the more likely an individual will accept the implied definition of an event of the group. In other words, the more they're looking at the group rather than looking at what's going on around them. If everyone else in a group seems unconcerned, an individual is less likely to interpret a situation as negative. So I'm taking my cues from everybody around me. So if I'm in a large group and something's happening and they're not reacting to it, then in order to be accepted by the group, I have to act just like they do. Does that make sense? I don't want to be different, I want to be the same. I have to be the same, because I want you guys to accept me. So I want to do exactly what you do. When my shoe's untied, I accuse my wife of having an affair. This is partially due to pluralistic ignorance, the mistaken interpretation that others are feeling what we are due to our illusion of transparency, the overestimation of others' ability to read or our internal states. The reality is that I assume that you know what I'm thinking, and that's known as the illusion of transparency. Just because I'm talking to you, I assume that you know what I'm thinking, and that's the illusion of transparency. And this leads to pluralistic ignorance. The assumption that everybody is feeling the same thing that I am. As odd as that may seem. So if I see smoke, my assumption is that you guys see smoke too, and you've already reacted to it, therefore I don't have to react to it. So if I see danger, if something looks dangerous, and you guys haven't reacted to it, then I'm not going to react to it. Okay. Researchers discovered that people in groups are less observant than people in small groups. Wait a minute, I've gone the wrong direction, haven't I? Latine and Rodin staged an experiment around a woman in distress. 70% of the individuals when alone responded to the woman's obvious distress. 40% of the pairs responded to the woman's distress. Of the 60% who didn't respond, most interpreted the situation as a non-emergency. As the number of people witnessing the emergency increased, the less likely anyone would render assistance. And this is known as the bystander effect. The more people around, the less likely that people will help. Because the assumption is that, well, if Kiana didn't respond, then I'm not going to respond, because evidently she knows more about this than I do. Or at least she knows something about it. And I don't know. You're the leader, so if you don't do anything, I ain't going to do nothing. Okay? And if I'm not doing anything, Francis isn't going to do anything. And if Francis doesn't do anything, then Travis is going to play on his computer and pretend that nothing's happening. There you go. That's the way the world works. And you're the leader, and it's your fault. There we go. At least we know whose fault it is. Not only are people more likely to misinterpret an actor's actions while in a group, but they're also more likely to misinterpret the willingness of other bystanders to help. It seems that the more people who witness a situation, the more likely each is to assume that someone else will take responsibility for the situation, a diffused responsibility for the action. So who's going to take responsibility? Nobody. Who wants to be the leader? Well, not Kiana, she doesn't want to be the leader. So she's not doing anything because Andre didn't do anything, and Edison's sitting in the back and not doing anything also. So who's the real leader? Well, it turns out that nobody's the leader, but nobody is taking responsibility because, well, we know that everybody's supposed to. We're going to talk more about this. This is just fascinating to me. It just drives me crazy because being in the military, there's a hierarchy, but sometimes nothing gets done. And the reason nothing gets done is because everybody assumes that it's somebody else's responsibility.
In several apartment complexes I've been in the past, there's always domestic violence.
Oh.
And that breaks out, everybody keeps quiet, or
Nobody
nobody
says.
looks the other way.
Yeah.
And there's actually like people, especially with single parents, and they have
Right.
other significants that come through. It's just like some of them won't interact.
Right.
Usually, like you said, the female will cling on to the male and say, "I'll get him." Well, either the wife or whoever.
Yeah, and then the grandmas and grandpas won't get involved because they don't want to say anything negative about their children. They're afraid their children will pull away from them. I know, it gets ugly. And then nobody helps, and then the kid gets butchered and burned in the bathtub or something. I'm just kidding. And then their shoes get untied or something. I don't understand. Untied shoes. I'll never forget that. I've had a really bad week and it's your fault.
I'm sorry.
That sounds like an Navajo government.
Oh, is that right? Nobody.
Typical workplace.
Yeah. Nobody in charge.
Yeah.
Nobody
Nobody
really
willing to take the,
take responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Common
And if
sense.
you had somebody that would take responsibility, you would assume that they're skimming off the top,
Yes.
skimming money, and that's why they're taking responsibility. I know. I keep complaining about the president, and I guess that's my fault. I need to do something about it. There's nothing I can't do. Oh, so our